Okay, so here's these renders with the flares, and you can see what's neat is that they're starting to bleed a little into the backgrounds. As we get closer, you'll start seeing a little bit more separation between those. And again, these are just shooting up. So let's start just building on these. We can also move them farther apart. Like this one way back here, it looks like just a blob simply because they're so far away. But what I can do is come in here to Objects, Lightmaster 2, use my center object there, my center item, and then just come in here like this. Because these are going to be a little bit farther, we could take this light and let's move it to 0 so we can see. These lights only have keyframes on 0. You have to remember that the master null is actually what's keyframed, so I don't have to really worry about setting other keyframes for these. I accidentally deselected, which is easy to do. There we go. Got to be patient when you're working with this many items. Okay, but now those will move up a little bit better. Let's take this null, this light streak null, and let's clone hierarchy again. Items, clone hierarchy. Okay, let's go to frame 0. And we're going to come here and zoom out our perspective. And we're going to take master 3, you can see it down here. Move it up to the front. And we'll pull it up near our main logo. Now, one thing I'm going to do is just delete these other keyframes. Okay? And the way I'm going to do that is just go to Shift forward, or I can just use my arrows here. I opened up my second timeline. Because often you can go up there and do it as well. But I think I'm just going to press Delete key. Oh, and let's press Move. That often works too. Here's an easier way. And just mouse over this like that. And then right-click on them. And delete. I know that's off screen, but there's a delete keys down at the bottom. Quick, easy way rather than using delete key. But you have to make sure that you are in the move because, well, there's no keyframes for anything else other than moves, so I needed to delete those first. Okay, and now with that selected, okay, I'm actually just going to rotate that null by pressing my Y command, and just like we did with the trusses and everything else, hit 90. Press T. We're going to move that. Okay, and let's just get this down over here, and I'm just working in a perspective mode, and we want to just kind of move it towards our main logo so that it'll pass right by it. And here's the thing, you know, I'm moving this around and I always forget that I can simply do this: move, reset, and it'll jump it right to that 0, 0 axis for me. And I'll move it here, then I'll move it here. And what I'm going to do is create a keyframe at 0. And then at frame 60, press F. Go to 60. I'm going to move that way down here. Like this. And we'll just shoot that way out into the back. Okay, so over 60 frames, that's just going to shoot across there. Okay. Now watch this. Save the scene. We will modify, go to items, that is, not modify, clone hierarchy. Light 4. We're going to rotate it 90 degrees on the heading. And then we're going to select Move. And we'll move it straight across. Let's go ahead and go forward to 60 and delete that key by pressing the delete key. Go to frame 60, and let's move it this way. It just shoots across the whole scene. And shift back arrow to get to my 0. And I think for this we will pull that way off and save the scene. Okay, so you can just repeat these lights like this, which is actually really cool. It's probably most likely going to be a little bit of trial and error with these, you know, seeing, you know, how they're moving. But here what you can see is just this little bit of camera movement. There's a set of lights shooting in that way. Here's this one coming this way, straight up. Here's the other one right here, shooting left to right. Okay, so you might need to repeat those, add some more, because our animation is going to last a little bit longer than 60 frames. But for the most part, we can see that, we're shooting these things along our scene. Let's take our numbers here. Just select these. Okay, and these are going to be real easy to move, because all we're going to do with these is move them here at frame 0. So auto keys on, we're at frame 0, and when we move that position, they will stay. But then I'm going to go up to frame, I'm going to all the way to 450, because our animation is going to last 450. Even though we're only going to set our camera in motion for about 300 frames, the whole thing is going to last about 450. And I'm just going to move it down to about here. Not very much at all. See, so over the animation as that's playing, it's actually just really subtle, like that. And that's what we can do with a lot of these other things. Not that the trusses would move, but I think some of those other streaks would. Anywhere else we have some of the numbers, you can move those as well. Just a few elements moving is all you really need when you got this much going on in the scene. And you can build upon this. I'm not going to worry too much more about trying to get all these things in motion. The one I would like to get in motion more is not so much these football fields. You could do that. Let's move these. But I know I've got a row of little dashes there too. So let's do this. Here's frame 0 for this football field. Let's center that so we just quickly and easily move it. And here's something you can do. Create a keyframe at 0. Just press Enter, or create key down here, hit return. And at frame 450, Shift H for size, and just size it up. A lot of people think you have to move stuff. So it's just slowly growing over the course of the scene. You can do the opposite with this one. Select that one, size it up a little bit at 0, and then go to 450, and just size it down a little. So not so much that it completely changes everything, but when you see how slow this is playing, they're just barely moving, just enough. Okay, you can even rotate them too. And what's cool about rotating them is that they pick up reflections differently. So totally up to you how you want to do it. So with that said, let's go ahead and get this logo animated. So our camera's here. I accidentally created a keyframe at 27, which I'm going to delete by pressing the delete key. And we're going to take the camera like this. Frame 0, we can start up top. I think I want to start up top like this. Okay. And we'll start over here and we'll swing around. So here's frame 0. That's what we're going to open up. And what I'm going to do, and this is often how I keyframe things, I'm going to go to frame, press F, go to frame 300, and I'm going to move my camera into where I want it to land. That helps me set up my entire motion. Okay. And where are you? And I just want it to come down right here, right in front of this thing, like that. And as I was saying about the light being to the left, the main light being to the left, that has a lot to do with how your eye sees things. We read right to left. A lot of really good photographs, the light is always on the left of a portrait. It just feels better. It's more aesthetically pleasing. Doesn't mean it has to be that way, but if you look at most shadows on things, on fonts and programs and stuff, they kind of drift down to the bottom right because naturally our eye likes the light to the top left. So that's where I set it. Okay, so here's frame 300. So right now what I did is I set up our 10-second animation coming down like that. Okay, not quite there yet, because we've got all these other cool things going on. But what that helps me do is set up my other ideas for what I want to do for the rest of the scene. Okay, because I got an idea of the timing. And maybe we need to come down a little bit sooner. You know that? The way you can do it is go like this. You can just open up that top frame there, that top timeline, click on that 300, and let's make it 200. I think we need to get down there sooner. Okay? And this is not necessarily playing in real time, but I'm going to come down even sooner. This thing needs to have a little more punch to it. There we go. 140 frames. Okay, so just about 4 seconds. All right, now, that's okay, but what I'm going to do is come up and maybe another 100 frames, and it's going to come to the right, come down a little bit with the right mouse, press Y, and then with the left mouse I can rotate like this. And that might be still a little too fast. And I'll show you how to fix that. Let's take this frame and pull that to about 120. So 4 seconds to get down there. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is come here in between those two keyframes, and I'm going to pull the camera out. Because we want to pass by stuff, you know. We want to be able to see all these cool things that we built. So, you know what? I'm going to delete this frame, go to frame 0. I think I need to get way over here some more. And maybe come down a little bit so I'm not traveling as far. And let's try and move in like this. Okay? So now our camera is whipping around, and that'll give us a much cooler view of everything. And instead of this guy being here at 120, let's try and make it land here. Now, I don't know if any of you guys went to film school or broadcast school, but there's often times where you don't really want to actually cross the 180 degrees. Meaning I don't want to have to try and come down and completely turn my camera around. Okay? I'm going to try and avoid that because it can be very awkward in the motion. Also, when you're looking at these logos and you want something powerful, you want to be kind of down beneath it. You want to be kind of looking up at it like that. But not too much because I want to be able to see some of that background in there. Yeah, that could be good. And that's also what the wide angle helps to do. Okay, so we've got this. We're coming in. We fly right by this. And I like how that looks. But what I want to do maybe is take... maybe I'll take like a... Here, take this truss right here. Just click on it. Press T for move. And maybe... it's like right here, so we can pass right by this thing. You know, you're using 3D. Take advantage of it. I'm going to create a key at 0 and delete it at 60. It created a key at 60 because my auto key was on. But I needed to be at that frame to see what I'm doing. See, and that way I pass right through it. That was just by chance. I didn't actually cut through any of the poles. Okay, but that'll be a neat thing, especially when we put the motion blur on. Now, you see how the camera just slams right in right here? All right, I think I want to create it maybe at 130 or so, just a little extra time. But all I'm going to do is, we can do it in the graph editor. Remember how we eased in? We set that intention. Here's another way to do it. Control G. Now watch down here in the positions. I've got my camera selected. I'm at frame 132, which is where my camera lands. Watch the positions. Control G. I get the Move TCB tool. You can just turn it on as well. And I'm going to click and drag to the right. And I create a tension of 1. And what that does is just makes my camera just slow down into that spot, which is all I want. And frankly, for here, we can do the same thing. Control G. And now it's going to ease out and whip through like that. And then we can go maybe another 100 and something frames and then slowly just kind of pan it around like this. Just a little bit. You know, a lot of people feel you need to move a lot. But you got to remember that when you create logos and things and elements like this, you never want anything to be not moving. Okay? And now that I did that, I'm actually going to have to Control G again and drag to the left and maybe remove that. Or just put a little bit on. Okay, so it slows down a little but doesn't completely stop it. Okay, because see that little motion there? That's what we're trying to avoid. Okay, so if you go into the graph editor, here's what's happening. You've got this with all these channels, which I think I just accidentally removed. Nope. Make it sure. You gotta be real careful in here. See how that dips down and comes around? So what you need to do is you can select around these. And even just choose one of these if you want. And change that little dip of how it changes. You can also use the continuity and bias too. I think there's a little bit of an issue with this here. There we go. Okay. And as this dips right here, okay, frame 132 where we initially land, if you zero this out, okay, that's what's normally happening there. Okay. Tension of 1, you can see how it just eases in. That's how it changes that motion. This is the motion curve. But we also want it to land here as well, and we don't want it to dip all the way through. Okay, so I'm just changing the position X, but you can work with the continuity and bias as well. And when you have multiple keyframes going like this, it can also be helpful to just do it in layout. Okay, so we know we want it to ease in right there, but let's take the camera at frame 132 and see what happens here. Because I was screwing around in the graph editor, which I thought I did, because I was moving too fast and the system didn't update for me, I accidentally just rotated everything. So basically, I got to reset this keyframe. So I'm going to delete it. Okay, now 185 is actually pretty close. Let me just find out where I am here. That's why I got to be really careful with the graph editor, and that the TCB tools work pretty well. Down here, this move TCB, because you can specifically control the item that way. When you do it in the graph editor, you can really screw things up, like I just did. So, okay, so there's our Sports Football League. And then if we just kind of come around here, maybe we'll even do this. I did like that it came through, but we'll pass this like that. Let's create a keyframe there, and then rotate it if we can. See that? We can kind of come in this way. It's very difficult when it's redrawing too. And that's often a good way to go too. Just let it come down like that. And we still got those nice elements moving back there. And then we'll just take the camera, move it over a little, and rotate it a little like that. So there's still always a little bit of motion. And in fact, I'm just going to move this all the way to the 450 mark. Okay. See a little weirdness there. See that little kind of little bit of weirdness. And you can play with the continuity by hitting Move TCB and maybe just kind of, give it a 0.5. It can go max to 1 or -1. And we don't want any tension on there just yet, because we want it to actually smooth through the keyframe. Yep, that's a little too much. See what it did there? A little too much. So let's move this to more of a -0.5. And sometimes maybe you just don't even use it. Let's just try it without. Okay, and again, all that's doing is, like I showed you in the graph editor, adjusting the input parameter of that curve. So we're going to come down. Now it's still kind of drifting out a little bit, so maybe we need a little bit of tension. So it slows down and kind of locks it a bit. And the reason it's doing that is because Lightwave's motions are built on curves. Okay, so if you've worked in Illustrator at all and you create a curve and add a point, and then you create another point, you know that that completely changes the shape of that motion curve. Same idea in here. Okay, and it's okay that it's floating around. We just don't want it to look messy. You want it moving. You want things moving around. But see, it goes off to the right a little bit too much. Okay, so you need to not necessarily slow it down, and this is where bias might come in. So I'll work with the bias a bit. Still a little bit too much. Negative 0.5. And that helps lock it a bit more, and then it comes around. Okay, so sometimes you got to work with bias. Most of the time, it's tension. Let's save the scene, and the last thing I'm going to do, and then this is done. We can render it out. Is I'm going to a perspective view like this. We're going to rotate around. Okay. I'm going to Shift S to create a new scene increment. Add a null object, and we're going to call this Scene Master, something like that. Okay. We're going to go to the Scene Editor. I like the classic Scene Editor. All right. Now, this is going to be a little bit tricky because it's off screen here. Let's see if I can do it this way. We are going to take, there's our Scene Master. That's the light streak. Here's the Scene Master, right? Let's do this. Take all your light streaks. Okay, so hold your Shift key and select them all. Click and hold your left mouse and drag them till this line goes underneath and indented from the Scene Master. See that? So now those are parented. Those master null objects are parented to that Scene Master. Okay, take your lights. Also parent those. Take your camera. Parent it. Now take all of your objects, select the last one, hold the Shift key, select the first one, click and drag it underneath and indented in the Scene Master. And when things in the item list and the scene list here are indented like this, that means they are parented to whatever they are indented from. So the Scene Master, if I close it up, nothing's beneath it, meaning everything is parent to that master. Now look, if I go to camera view, nothing changes here. Everything's still the same. But what did I just do? Well, I parented everything to that master null object, right? Scene Master. I'm going to press Y for rotate. First create a key at 0 for that master null. Then I'm going to rotate it 360 degrees. Actually, I'm going to go maybe 360, 3600 degrees. Okay? And I'm going to create a key for that rotation at about 3000. Now, our scene is not 3000 frames long. What I did is I rotated this thing. Now, let's just do a 360, not to confuse you. Okay, we're going to do one rotation, 360 degrees over 3000 frames. Now, look, everything is rotating. Okay, but it's going to take 3000 frames before it finishes the rotation. That might be a little too fast, but okay, you're thinking, well, why are you rotating it all? The reason I'm rotating it all, and this is just kind of an old Lightwave trick, but it still just works. Okay, if you're watch this animation. Everything is still the way we set it up. Lights are moving, camera's moving, but look at the grid underneath. See the grid rotating? Well, the grid's not really rotating. We are. We're all rotating together. The lights, the cameras, everything. Which means, effectively, that nothing has changed other than the environment. And since this is reflecting many things in the environment, such as fractal reflections, you end up getting some streaked, cool reflections across there. Let me pull this up real quick. I'm going to show you this just from today real quick. And then this is finished. 3D content. Okay, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Now you can't see it so much here because everything's moving. But if you watch here at the end, watch the reflections. See the reflections moving? See those reflections moving across? That's what we're doing. And that's how it's done. You parent everything once. It's kind of like your last step. And just rotate that null. The reason we created it over 3,000 frames is so that it rotates slow. So it takes 3,000 frames, which is like 2 minutes, almost 2 minutes, for it to make one full rotation. And it still might be a little too fast, but so there we have it. Let me call up the render, and we'll wrap this one up.